Republicans in Idaho are trying to pass a bill to ban public drag shows. And I want to be very clear about what they're trying to do, because I understand that for months and months now, Republicans have been trying to convince you that everything that they're saying about drag shows, about the trans community, about the LGBTQ community more broadly, is about saving the children. But it is becoming increasingly difficult to believe that literally at all. When they go from talking about like medical care for trans children to banning it outright for adults, kind of puts the point to their lie. And now they're not talking about banning drag shows that kids are at. They're talking about just banning them. They do not want it to exist. And I want to give you the details. Blaine Conzatti is the president of the Idaho Family Policy Center. As a rule, if you're new to American politics, any organization that has words like the Family Policy Center in it is definitely bad. That's just how it works. It'll never miss. Says no child should ever be exposed to sexual exhibitions like drag shows in public places, whether that's at a public park or a public library. Again, what is supposed to be necessarily sexual about this? I have no idea. I don't often hear people say that being at the beach is a naturally sexual thing, despite the fact that people are showing more flesh there. Donald Trump ran beauty pageants. Are those necessarily sexual? No, of course not, because that's something that is generally designed for straight people to get off to. They don't have a problem with that. When it's something like this where it's queer culture, then suddenly instinctively they feel like it's sexual and thus threatening. So their draft bill that this individual is putting together is supposed to be introduced as soon as the legislature gets underway. We don't know exactly what it's going to say or who is going to sponsor it, but we do know that the basis for it is absolute BS. So this individual cited a particular case where a drag performer was supposed to have exposed their genitalia to children. You might have seen that going around all over right-wing media. It wasn't true, it was a doctored video. They don't care, there were no apologies, and they're still using that as justification to ban drag shows. But in particular, his reason for it, he says that drag is inherently a sexualized caricature of gender. He says it's like blackface. And this, by the way, has been an argument that has absolutely taken off on the right over the past, feels like a few weeks. Says you overemphasize certain natural characteristics so much that it becomes a caricature of itself. Which, even if you believe that that's true, I still don't understand what the sexual part of it is. But anyway, AB, what do you think about this?
So drag shows have nothing, they are not related in any capacity to blackface, right? So when you think about the idea of blackface, it was to intentionally keep a particular race of people, black people, out of certain positions and jobs, right? We didn't want them participating. And so white people would rather paint their faces than to allow black people to be actors or to be in theater. When you think about drag, right, there's a completely different context. What about when you go to the circus and there's clowns, right? And people are dressed up, right? Like this, it's an act, it's performance, right? And then think about the fact that the First Amendment, even if we do want to say it's sexual, right? It's obscene, it's indecent for children in particular. The First Amendment protects that, right? There are First Amendment protections for things such as having porn shops, right? Or being able to share that type of material. So this is gonna be a big issue. Like it's gonna get litigated further if they even do try to put this on the books, but you're really violating people's First Amendment rights just because you're being biased, right? And for you to look at drag and feel that there's a sexual nature to it goes to question your sexual interest. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I can see in the chat, some people are speculating that someone maybe accidentally came across a show and felt a bit tingly, and now it has to become a whole national thing. That might be possible, but I also think the simpler explanation is just it's a convenient dodge. They want their base to be focused on this. They're not interested. The politicians are not. Like tons of politicians haven't made their entire political career so that someday they can end drag shows. They don't actually care about that. They care about the economic policy, but they can't win office being honest about what they want to do economically. And so they have to focus on the drag shows. And think about what they're doing here. Not only are they saying that they're inherently sexual, but they're implying that they're inherently predatory. That the reason these need to be stopped is because a kid might walk by at some point or see it or hear of it or whatever. Drag shows are not about predators. They're not about children. They're not about any of that. Okay, it's a culture. You could learn about that. They're not interested, so they're not going to find out. But they are trying to train people to think that drag performers are inherently predators. It's just the groomer thing again, and they don't care what damage is done. We've already talked about the death threats earlier this week that came after a drag story hour, I think it was, at a dog shelter. They don't care if these people get harassed or if they get beaten or if they get murdered. This is a convenient thing for them to focus on, and so we can expect more of it.